In this video, we'll use components. They're containers that can be included in a panel and associated with another panel in order to run a panel object inside another one. We'll also see the master panel object, which will allow us to define a container screen inside which all the screens of the travel agency application will be executed, so that they all have the same appearance and context. For example, the agency's logo, among other things, will always be shown. The panel object allows encapsulating functionality through the use of components, in a similar way to web panels with web components. Let's see an example of use. We're going to build a panel object that shows the attractions and data of a selected country, but this time, the information will be displayed using a component inside the panel being created. To create the panel that will contain the component, we make a save as of view attractions more info with the name view attractions country info 2. To the right of the attractions grid, from the toolbar, we insert a component control. Similarly to what we did before, when clicking on the name of a country in the grid, the information of that country will be displayed. Now we'll create the panel to associate with the component. We call it View Country Cities, and from the toolbar, we drag the country name attribute and a grid with the city name attribute. We assign the city base transaction to the grid. Now we add a parm rule with the country ID attribute. In the navigation list of the panel, in the level detail node, we can see that the country table is run through, filtered by the country ID attribute included in the parm rule. So, it'll retrieve a single record corresponding to the country received by parameter. In the level detail grid 1 node, we see that the grid runs through the city table, also filtered by the country ID received by parameter. In the properties of component 1, in object, we choose the View Country Cities panel, and in parameters, we add the country identifier variable. This variable will store the value of the country ID attribute of the selected grid row. One difference we can see compared to web panels is that here, it's not necessary to change the type of the View Country Cities panel to make it a component. When inserting a component control, we can choose to insert any of the panels we created before. Now we have to invoke the component panel when clicking on the country name in the attractions grid. So we program the tap event of the country name attribute with the invocation. Since this panel was created from a save as, we already had code in that event, so we delete it. First, we save the country ID corresponding to the selected country name in the country identifier variable that we defined before. Then, we dynamically create the View Country Cities object associated with component 1. Using the create command and sending the chosen country by parameter. Since the panel we're building is already set to main, we're going to run it with run. We click on the country, China, and see that China's cities are displayed: Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. Now let's see the firing order of the events when we have panels inside another panel when using components. The panel objects that we insert as components inside another panel have the same events that they had as a panel. That is, client-side events, client start, back, user, events, and so on, and also server-side events, start, refresh, and load. In other words, we must consider the order in which the events of the components we have in the panel will be fired relative to the events of the host panel. First, the events of the panel containing the components will be fired in the usual order we saw before. That is, client start, start, refresh, and load. Then, from top to bottom, and from left to right, the events of each panel included as a component also in the usual order. Now let's see what the master panel object is. This object can only be used in web applications generated in Angular. In the properties of the View Attraction More Info panel object, we can see that one of them is the master panel property, which in our panel appears empty. There we indicate which master page will contain the panel object, and where it'll be loaded. This concept is analogous to that of the webmaster panel seen for web panels. However, unlike them, a panel object does not have a property to change the type. Instead, the master panel object is a separate object from the panel object. We'll create an object of master panel type and call it masterpanel_travel agency. In the toolbar, there's a content placeholder container control available, where the panel objects will be loaded. We'll insert the content placeholder in the web panel. Above it, we insert a table, and inside it, an image with the agency's logo. And below and to the right, we insert tables so that the logo is displayed aligned to the left. We adjust the properties of the containing table so that the image looks right. And we do the same with the main table. Now we must change the behavior of the image to fit the size we set. For now, we're going to create an image header travel agency class, to which we assign the scale type property with fit value. Later on, when discussing the design topic, we'll see how to do this with a design system object. We assign the created class to the logo image, and we save. Now we assign the master panel property to the View Attractions More Info and the View Attractions Country Info panels with the master panel travel agency object that we've just created. We run it. We see that the agency logo is shown, and the panel View Attractions More Info is loaded underneath. If we click on the country France, we see that the information panel of the country also has the same logo. Here we won't go into details of the design system of the panel object, but we can say that the use of the design system object is similar to that of web panels. We'll get more into design in a future video.